Hi, friends of more of Management of Reality. I'm here with my friend Michael. Michael, could you pronounce your last name?
Gamal.
Michael Gamal. Thank you for joining us, Michael. He is a Coptic Christian, meaning he is from a small Christian community based in Egypt, mostly originating in Egypt. The Coptic Christians are a very old Christian community, and if I remember correctly, Michael, it is one that is recognized by the Catholic Pope as falling somehow within the fold of the Catholic Church, even though it's its own special variant. Am I right about that?
I'm not too sure about that. Again, not the most
Well,
religious.
that's my understanding. We can go
Yeah,
look it up. I,
I'll make
uh,
one. I'll make one correction. We're not a small community.
oh no,
We're
tell
actually
me how many are you?
well, because the government refuses to take an official count of us because they prefer to undercount us, so that way they're not obligated to give us more representation. There is no official number, but it's estimated to be anywhere between 12 to 15%. At the very lowest, at 10%.
Egypt?
Yes, and so
Wow.
there's anywhere between 10 to 15 million Coptic Christians in Egypt, and we're actually the largest Christian minority in the Middle East.
Wow, that's gigantic.
And I think
Okay,
30 million worldwide. I think 25 to 30 million worldwide.
my mistake. So Michael, thank you for joining us, and we're going to be talking with Michael about the challenges facing the Christian Copts or the Coptic Christians, and some issues having to do with the larger context of the Middle East and the defense of Israel. Because my understanding is that Michael is a very strong supporter of Israel, as are many Christians around the world. And it's interesting. It's interesting to hear why. And the first thing I want to ask you, Michael, is, well, you have your own channel, right? You have your own
I have
YouTube
my own.
channel.
I
Tell
do.
us about that. Tell us
Well,
about that first, so that
I'm
people know where you are.
I'm still building up my YouTube channel. I only have a few interviews that I've done on there with friends, other content creators, friends of mine. But my main, where I get the most attention is Instagram, and then second to that would be TikTok. And I'm also building up, my TikTok visibility. I mean, not TikTok, X visibility. So Instagram is definitely where I'm most visible.
Find you. What do they? What do?
Well, if you look at my name right at the bottom of my screen, that is my Instagram handle, Coptic Kapara. So, yeah.
Will be interesting for everybody. How did you become defend my? You were all of Israel. Is that right?
Correct. This is quite a recent thing for me. I spent nearly 20 years supporting the other side, the Palestinian cause, and it's astonishing in both directions because
Okay, so
my
why
parents.
did you support the Palestinian cause originally? Let's begin there.
I grew up sort of detached from my roots as a Coptic person from Egypt. I grew up in Massachusetts, and the closest church to us was like an hour and 15 minutes away. And because I didn't grow up nearby the church, I grew up an hour and 15 minutes away from it. I didn't grow up close enough to the Coptic community. I would only go there on Sunday, and so I didn't have that sort of um, strong root to it. And I felt like I was the only Egyptian in Massachusetts. There's not a lot of people from the Middle East in Massachusetts. And when I moved from Massachusetts to California around the end of my junior year, when I came to California, finished up my senior year and entered college, that was actually that was the first time where I started meeting other Middle Eastern people that weren't, Coptic Egyptian. I started meeting a lot of Arabs and Muslims. And so, in this area, there's a lot of Palestinians, Syrians, Egyptian Muslims, and I started getting all this, these narratives from them about how the Palestinians were kicked out of their houses and kicked off their land unfairly. The Jewish Zionists just showed up one day and kicked them off their land. That is how they present things to you. And at the same time, um, it was also the first time where I felt like I found a community that I can relate to because, their parents came from the Middle East, Arab countries similar to the way mine did. We spoke similar enough Arabic. We listened to the same music. We watched the same movies. Very similar immigrant stories in America. And so I felt like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. At last I found a community where I feel like I could relate to because growing up in America, particularly after 9/11, you felt like you were too Middle Eastern for the Americans. But I also, felt like I was, because I didn't have that strong Coptic identity, I never related to the people in my own community. And
Mm.
my parents also, like I grew up in a very Arabized household. I'd say there's like two types of Coptic people, right? There are the Coptic people that they are so angry and resentful towards Islam that they reject anything that has anything to do with Arabic. So there are Coptic people who literally won't listen to Arabic music; they'll listen to Coptic hymns instead. And then you have the more, metropolitan people like my parents who grew up in the big cities, who for them it wasn't such a big deal. And I watched Arabic movies growing up, listened to Arabic music. That was more. I felt closer to that than I did, sort of like the Coptic Church. And so I found myself relating to, the Arab and Muslim community a little bit more.
Okay. And so, in other words, you adopted the so-called quote unquote pro-Palestinian cause because it seemed to be a necessary requirement for the Arab identity that you were adopting as you came into contact with these other Arabs. Would that be fair?
Yeah, and I mean, they tell you these stories, these very traumatic, sob stories. They always tell you them without context. They don't tell you why these stories exist. But, when you hear it for the first time, you're just sort of like, "Oh my God, how could such a thing happen? And how is nobody fighting for us?" You almost feel victimized by association
Hmm.
by then being their friends, a lot of them, like, they maybe their parents lived in refugee camps, or maybe their parents were originally from what they consider, like the old Yeshuv, pre-state Israel. And so
Hmm.
maybe some of them, had to live in Jordan or Syria, places like that. And so, but this is the thing is, neither of my parents were pro-Palestinian. Neither of them.
No. Oh.
No, actually, my parents were very supportive of Israel. They rejected the Palestinian cause in every capacity that you could think of, but it wasn't something that was talked about a lot in my household. My parents
Now, but
really,
why do you think your parents were pro-Israel instead of pro-Palestinian?
I could say the overlap between my parents on this particular issue is the fact that they recognize it for being a bloodthirsty and morally bankrupt cause that's done nothing but, spread chaos in the Middle East. And for my dad as well, probably a little bit more so my mom, but definitely for my dad, he saw it as an extension of, this Islamism. He saw the Palestinian cause sort of being like the tip of the spear of an Islamic movement.
I see. Your parents, their anti stance kept them on the side rather than on the Palestinian side.
Right, right. And I'm sure that, like, growing up in Egypt, they did have pro-Palestinian leaning in the beginning growing up because they didn't know any better. It's a country with state-controlled media. You don't get a lot of information from the outside. But they came to America at different points. So my dad came in the late 70s, my mom came in the early 80s. So when they came to America, they realized how, for lack of better words, full of crap it was. And
Mm,
my dad, he had Jewish friends in America.
I see.
And I think it was my dad who sort of ended up influencing my mom later, because I don't think my mom had many Jewish friends, but my dad did when he came to America.
I
And
see.
so, yeah, that's how it sort of came about.
Okay, and so what was your transition like? So you started out sort of developing an Arab identity as you came into contact with Syrians, Palestinians, etc. But how did that identity, which was originally pro-Palestinian as a result of this contact, how did it become pro-Israeli? What was the key moment that made you think differently?
It's a culmination of many moments. First off, like I said, my dad. I'm gonna put a lot of emphasis on my dad because he was the one that really. It was sort of like this consistency from him that helped me grow out of it. But it wasn't until late 2023, early 2024,
Hmm.
where I started withdrawing and gradually pulling myself out of it. But me and my
So the
dad.
7th of October was a big deal.
Sorry, could you repeat that? The
The 7th
I think you're saying, I think you're referring to the 7th of October, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, was that a big watershed moment for you?
It pains me to say this, but the 7th of October, the terror attack by Hamas is not what shifted me. Um, I remember, it's, sorry, this is always sort of like a point of shame for me, but a few weeks after the 7th of October, my dad called me. Oh, hello,
I'm back.
you're back. All right, all right. So, a few weeks after the 7th of October, actually, the 7th of October made me dig my heels more into the Palestinian cause for a little bit.
Oh, interesting.
But it made me dig in more without the information of what happened on that day, the day of.
I see.
I just sort of like assumed it was just a much larger scale attack than what was normal. And as the weeks, as the days trickled and the weeks went on, you found out more and more information. The fact that women were raped, their bodies were mutilated, tied to trees, their houses were set on fire. Um, and so a couple of weeks after October 7th, my dad gave me a call and he asked if he could have lunch with me. And
Mm,
I obliged him. I went out to see him. And he just gave me this sort of punch of reality where he said, listen, I've heard about the things that you've posted online supporting the Palestinians, and I want you to hear it from me that what the Palestinians, and he said the Palestinians, he didn't say Hamas, he said the Palestinians. He
mm.
said what the Palestinians did to the Israelis is exactly like what ISIS did to people in Iraq and Syria. They raped women, they mutilated people, they just they just did the exact
Beheaded.
same thing. Yeah, they beheaded people, and he said, Habibi, this is ISIS. This is no different than what ISIS did, and what you're posting, it's scaring me because I feel like I'm gonna lose everything that I love about you. I'm afraid of losing my son to this violent cause. Not that he thought that I would become a violent person, but my dad, he knows what it's like to be indoctrinated into this. He knows how this, like, people sacrifice their entire sense of humanity to be in this cause so that they can justify horrific acts of terrorism. And that's what he feared for
Mm,
me. And it was
mm.
a tough moment for me to hear it. Me and my dad, we always butted heads about this issue. And then a week after, I was in San Diego. It was during Halloween, so me, and my then girlfriend, and my friends, her friends rather, we were going from bar to bar, bar hopping in the streets of San Diego. And I remember I reached a red light, and we're waiting for the light to turn green. And in front of me, there is this structure. I can't remember exactly what the structure is, but there's like this, short structure, and on it there are the posters of the hostages, the Israeli hostages. And I remember I'm looking at it, and the only thing I can think about is how people in Toronto and in New York City, they were defacing the posters of the hostages. And it felt like looking at the posters of the hostages and then thinking about what people were doing to those posters in other cities. it made the blood in my veins evaporate. Like it was such an intense feeling. I still to this day I can't really describe it. I always say it's probably like the closest I've come to having like an outer body experience. And I remember thinking to myself, am I allowed to curse?
Go ahead.
I remember thinking to myself, you might be a piece of shit, but you're not such a piece of shit that you would ever deface a poster of a hostage, And to this day, it is one of the cruelest things that I can think of throughout the course of the war was that people were defacing it is for some it just speaks of an unbelievable cruelty to me. I to this day it really bothers me to think about.
So this was after your conversation with dad.
Correct.
I see. So in a way, your dad kind of for
Perhaps I would like to think that I still had some decency left in me, and because it's just they're hostages, man. Like they're somebody's loved one. It's
yeah.
just so like who knows? Like imagine somebody's walking the street and that happens to be the poster of their loved ones, and they see it. Like it to me, it's just so unbelievably cruel to do that. I just yeah, it's
Hmm.
and
Well,
then
the photos of the hostages. Um, I mean, I was already pro-Israel when this happened, but the to see the photos of the hostages, the effect it had on me was like, this is a person. It's a person who was maybe sipping tea in the morning in their home, who was talking to their children, who was getting up to eat breakfast, who was just having an ordinary day, and all of a sudden these monsters came into their homes and started torturing them to death. And I thought, God, I mean, this could happen to anyone. These were ordinary people going about their day, and all of a sudden, all kinds of violence descended on them. And the minute you see them in the photo, smiling, in a moment before this horror, uh, smiling, in a moment that was to them pleasant, somebody was taking their photo, they were having a good time, and I think all of that was suddenly shattered, and their life in a second became living hell. um, and that really brings the humanity of these people to the fore. It really it connected me with just with the kinship we all have with any other human being, right? And the fact that you think to yourself, there but for the grace of God go I, you know uh, that could have happened to me. I would think it was completely unfair if anything like that happened to me. um, so it really helps motivate my not that I needed to see the photos to think that this was wrong, but when I see the photos, it really stirs my heart. I mean, it really connects me compassionately with the suffering, not just of the hostages, but of the people who were tortured to death on that day.
yeah, yeah, and as quickly as that moment happened, I know I said it felt like an eternity. It was probably
Mm.
like 10, 15 seconds.
Mm.
Because then the light turned green and then you go on. We were bar hopping, so that was, that I continued on with that activity. And then, but that was like the first moment that I had after October 7th. Um, I mean, not the, I guess you could say like for my dad, it was a moment too, but at least like a personal moment with me and, that to sit with me. Um, it was, that was the first moment that I had where I felt, something like this is really, really messed up. Like this is,
How did this change your relationship with your acquaintances and friends, Arabs who were strongly pro-Palestinian? Tell us about that.
I didn't talk about it. I kept it to myself. I didn't know then that that was sort of like the beginning of the wheels turning for me.
I see.
So then a few weeks later, maybe it was a month later, I can't remember exactly now, but then I noticed two people whom I despised started advocating for the Palestinians, Candace Owens and Andrew Tate. I had always despised these two, particularly Andrew Tate, because he, was a sex trafficker and all this stuff. And I saw both of them as being grifters, being very dishonest actors. And I remember I used to get really mad at my Muslim friends for defending Andrew Tate because the way I saw it was they care more about a Muslim sex trafficker than they cared about his non-Muslim victims. And so when Candace Owens and Andrew Tate started publicly supporting the
Oh, but
Palestinian,
Andrew Tate is Muslim?
he did convert to Islam. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so when they started publicly supporting the Palestinian cause, it was like you felt like filthy by association.
Mm,
You want to feel good about the company that you keep, right?
mm,
And
yeah,
you want to feel good about the people who are in the same camp, so to speak, as you.
right.
But it sort of like it was this sort of like punch of clarity where I was like, wait, if I think they're grifters, what does that make me? And then I had another realization, like immediately after, was like I realized that the way I was defending the Palestinian cause was the same way that my Muslim friends were defending Andrew Tate. I cared more about the cause rather than the victims of it.
Right.
And it was a really like that one, like really, it was ugly feeling because it was about like, I really had to reflect on like because I thought I was a principled person. I
Right.
really believed that I was a principled person, but like that, when you analyze the way somebody speaks, and then you realize you're actually you're not better than them. You're actually just like them. You know,
Mm.
you utilize the same rhetoric, just on a different thing than they do.
Tell me
And
something. What about the fact that Hamas is so horrible, so horrible to the Arab Palestinians in Gaza? Did the fact that did the violence of Hamas against the Arab Palestinians in Gaza ever become for you like a red flag? Like why aren't we protesting against Hamas's outrages against the Arabs? Was that ever an issue that helped you wake up to this?
well, I have to be completely honest. I don't know that so many Gazans really hate Hamas.
No,
I'm
no, no, no,
certain.
no. They may not hate Hamas, but the fact that they've been indoctrinated into Jew hatred by Hamas, even if Hamas didn't have even if Hamas was not oppressing them in other ways, that in itself is violence against the Arabs, and the fact that they are used as human shields, even when they are willing human shields, or as human bait, even if they are willing human bait, that's an outrage against the Arabs.
Well, we didn't believe that. We dismissed that as Zionist propaganda. Like that's quite literally
Oh,
the
I see.
terminology that we would use is that, the human shield stuff is Zionist propaganda. It's a lie made by the West in order
I,
to kill innocent, Palestinians. That's the way the mind works. And then, indoctrination. Listen, if you're similarly indoctrinated, you don't really have an issue with other people being indoctrinated. And then,
mm,
everybody that my Arab Muslim friends supported Hamas, or at least supported what Hamas did to Israel. Because even if you don't necessarily ideologically agree with Hamas, you see if they're able to hurt Israelis, think that is that overrides whatever sort of ideological or religious difference that you have with a group like Hamas.
yeah, you give them a pass.
Right, right.
I see. So once you shifted in your own mind, as you said, you didn't really discuss that with your friends, but now you have a channel where you defend Israel. So at at some point, they must have noticed that you changed your mind. How did that change your relationships?
So, there were a couple other moments. We won't get into them too in depth, but uh, I just gradually got sick of the the advocacy. I you know continuously got more clarity as to what the cause was really about. And while that was happening, I was also gradually withdrawing from my social circle. And you have to understand that some of these friends that I had, been friends with them for nearly 20 years. I had went to their weddings. I took it for granted that they would be at my wedding. They would be around when I had kids. So
Mm.
it wasn't easy to like completely pull away from that. And
Mm.
in May, I sort of silently um, exited that realm of politics, and I figured, okay, I'm just gonna exit this and not really care, be a both sides type person and just not involve myself with it. Um, and so I scrubbed like my entire social media in early May. Like,
Wow.
yeah, it scrubbed it. No free pal. I deleted every post about Palestine, like literally everything on my personal page.
Wow.
And I remember the I was at the gym the day that Noah Argamani got rescued, and I
This
pick up
is
my
one of the hostages.
right. I pick up my phone and I get the notification that she got rescued, and I was happy because I was like, okay, the more hostages get rescued, maybe we're closer to ending this war.
Mm.
That we're
Hmm.
closer to resolving this. And as happy as I was, and it was probably the first time in my life that I was genuinely happy for, like an Israeli's well-being that they were rescued, right?
Mm.
Like almost
Mm.
immediately after, I was mad because, even though I had exited that realm of politics silently, my social circle was still pro-Palestinian. So I'm seeing
Right.
all the propaganda on my social media, okay? And I remember there was a post made by a Palestinian comedian, Sami Obeid, okay? And in this post of his, he says, if I'm ever held hostage somewhere and you have to kill however many people to rescue me, just leave me as a hostage, leave me there, right? And I remember reading this post and thinking it was the most disingenuous piece of crap I'd ever read in my entire life. I felt like it was so emotionally dishonest. I was so mad because, listen, I don't have kids of my own. I have 3 dogs. If one of my dogs was kidnapped, and they did kidnap dogs too on October 7th, if one of my dogs was kidnapped, I would burn down the world to get my dog back. I don't give a shit what is between me and my dog. I am doing whatever it takes to get my dogs back. And so I was so unbelievably mad. And then the next month was the Majd al-Shams attack on the Druze kids. And I remember seeing that, and I actually, between Noah Argamani being rescued and the Majd al-Shams attack, I'd actually made Israeli friends online. So I had
Mm.
actually started communicating with Israelis, okay? And
How did that?
I was on, that app Omi TV. It's like the random video chat app.
I don't know that app.
Oh, so okay, there's this app that people use to do random video chats, and you can set it to a specific country so that people from that
Oh,
country you get to talk to them. And so
oh
I
wow.
was, yeah, and so I did it because I know that there were Arabs doing it to harass Israelis and to, say horrible things to them and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? Let me do the opposite of that. Let me do that and actually like be a human being to them and be kind to them. And so I had made like some Israeli friends, and so I had actually like perfectly lovely people, man. Like it was like, and
Yeah.
like and so when
Jews are mostly nice.
they're almost too nice. I have to be
Yeah.
honest, almost too nice.
Yeah.
And so when the Majd al-Shams rocket attack happened, I saw how the Jewish community reacted to a community that wasn't actually their own, because it was Druze kids in Majd al-Shams that were killed. And I also saw for the first time how the propaganda machine worked for the first time being outside of that advocacy. And so I saw them immediately trying to pin the blame on Israel for those Druze kids being killed. They started saying that it was a misfired Iron Dome missile, the Tamir missile that the Iron Dome uses.
Right.
And I started doing my research. I started analyzing the differences between the Iron Dome missiles and the Falak missiles that Hezbollah uses. And I researched like what if there's ever been an instance of an Iron Dome missile misfiring and hurting somebody. And I found like one instance that, it caused like moderate injuries to a grown man. So clearly these missiles are not meant for mass casualties. They don't have irregular shrapnel. They have regular
Oh no,
shrapnel.
that's right. That's right. They're meant to hit. You're hitting one bullet with another bullet.
The,
They're not meant to produce a giant hole in the ground at all.
They're not as heavy as the missiles that Hezbollah uses. The trajectory is completely different. But none of these facts mattered to the pro-Palestinian cause. And this was actually the first time where I started doing like sort of covert advocacy, because I would go on pro-Palestinian pages and I would say, no, this is BS. Here's the difference between the Tamir missiles and the Hezbollah rockets.
Mm.
And none of these facts mattered to them. None of
Mm.
them. And they're like, oh, are you a missile expert now and all this crap? You know, like they're so like they have to purposely disconnect themselves from
Mm.
reality to keep doing this. And something that I always compare the Palestinian cause to is, I'm assuming you have some familiarity with pro wrestling.
Yeah, I
Okay,
do.
so in pro wrestling, you have to suspend your disbelief because you know it's rehearsed and choreographed, right? Because
Yeah, of
if
course.
you watch it constantly with the thought that it's fake in your mind, how can you possibly enjoy it, right? Now I
Well,
was
or you can enjoy it because you like the exaggeration. So that's what they call camp. So you know it's fake, but you enjoy the theater of it. That's true for a lot of people.
right, but if you know if it's very good quality, for a few seconds you'll forget that it's not real because you'll be emotionally invested, right? So the pro-Palestinian advocacy works in the same way, but you have to suspend different things about yourself. You have to suspend your humanity, you have to suspend your intellect, you have to suspend your integrity, you have to suspend your critical thinking. You have to
Mm.
suspend all these things in order to justify the absolute worst type of behavior, the most criminal conduct. Okay, and
Mm.
you have to suspend your humanity because if you begin to allow yourself to feel for the Israelis, then you're a traitor, you're an agent for Israel, you're all these things. And so I've always compared it to that. And like I said, it was the first time that I had actually started like advocating for the Israelis, you know, covertly. Um, and but that was like after that, it was just sort of like this I was on this steady path to
Mm.
being where I am today. And so
And what did that?
again,
How did that work internally? In other words, as you as you observed yourself changing and engaging in favor of Israel, how did you explain that change to yourself? Because you had been on the other side. So how did this feel?
there was, you know, it wasn't so much an explanation to myself. I'm sure I had like, you know, this inner dialogue to myself, but I can't remember like exactly like what that inner dialogue was because things
Okay.
were going so at, you know, things just happen sort of so fast that you don't
Mm.
really take the time to sit down and be like, I'm going to remember this a year from now, you know? But, you know, I'm a very secular person. Okay, I believe in LGBT rights. I believe in freedom of speech. I believe in all these, you know, Western ideals that don't exist in the Arab and Muslim world. The one place where it exists in the Middle East is Israel.
Right.
Okay, and then I also started watching like pro-Israel content on YouTube. I remember I stumbled upon an episode. Sorry, I stumbled upon an episode of Yasmin Mohammed with Dr. Annette Wilf.
Okay.
And I didn't like watch it purposely. I remember I was doing something and I just wanted something on in the background. And so it was like the autoplay, right? The YouTube autoplay just plays the next video. And so
Hmm.
I'm hearing this stuff and they're talking about UNRWA. And the entire time that I was supporting the Palestinians, I was like, oh, UNRWA is this humanitarian organization. You know, they're just helping out people. Like that's like you see the letters UN, and so that's what you assume. It's just assume that it's a humanitarian mission, right?
The UN is supposed to be a good thing.
Right. And so when I hear Dr. Annette Wolf start talking about these things, it blew my mind. It really blew my mind. I just you feel like you've been tricked so badly. You know, like you feel like they really made a fool out of you to support this
Mm.
stuff.
Mm.
And then there's also this guy's channel. His name is Oren. He has a channel on YouTube called the Traveling Israel channel.
Well, I want to interject something really quick because you say you feel like they made a fool of you. Well, they made a fool of Einat Wilf.
Yeah.
She used to support the Oslo process and bringing those terrorists into Israel and the two-state solution and so forth. And I have an interview with her. I interviewed her for Arut Stov, And I asked her some very sharp questions, and it's obvious that she doesn't really understand very much. She was trained as the political scientist or these international relations specialists, and they don't learn anything when they get their degrees. They just get all of this propaganda in their heads. They don't really understand how the world works, but then they get their degrees and they are placed in positions of responsibility so they can rubber stamp these diplomatic processes, never really understanding what the fuck they're doing. And
Right.
so later with October 7th and all this dramatic savagery that took place, some of them wake up like she did. But when I asked her, well, wait a minute, there was all this information already available. Why would you even participate in this in the beginning, in the first place, right? She didn't really have a good reply, because the information I was asking her to consider, she still didn't know about. Stuff that she should have known way back if she was an expert worth her salt. So this is something that is important for people to understand. A lot of the people in positions of responsibility, such as herself, were functioning as what they call useful idiots, who ended up supporting this entire process without ever understanding what the hell they were doing.
When was this interview that you had with her?
It's recent. It's from
It is.
last year. It's from earlier this year, I think.
Oh, really?
I'll send it to you. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Please send me that, because I adore Dr.
I'll
Will.
send you. There's an interview, and then there's an article about the interview. So I'll send you the article because it has the interview embedded,
Yeah,
and
because
we'll put it in the description for people who watch this video.
I have her book, her compilation of essays, "We Should All Be Zionists," and then I have, right here, the War of Return by Dr.
Yeah.
Will. So she was one of the first sort of like academics that on the Israeli side, that I started really paying attention to.
Right. So what she's doing now is useful to our side, but you have to understand she's one of the people who pushed for the Oslo process earlier.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. She did talk about that in the books.
there was plenty of information. I mean, so when the Oslo process was invented, everybody who participated in the Oslo process knew that these people were terrorists, that the PLO were terrorists. They wanted to kill Jews. There was no reason to bring them into the Jewish state, and they did it anyway. Why? Because they were acting under this ideological blinder of this managed reality in which everybody who goes to the university and studies these disciplines of political science and international relations and so forth is indoctrinated. So I think you'll find the article and the interview very interesting. You'll see that she twists herself into a pretzel. She can't answer my questions because she still doesn't understand what it is that she participated in. It's very interesting.
I can see what you mean, because I can see sort of what you mean by that, because she still believes in the two-state solution. She
No,
she
no.
calls herself a long-term peace activist. I remember, like, she had this interview with Yeshai Fleischer where she said, like, she's sort of like combating the idea of, one Jewish state. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I misheard something.
No. At least in the interview I had with her, she seemed completely opposed to the idea of the two-state solution.
Oh, maybe
Uh,
maybe I'm wrong then.
her whole shtick now is that, well, we had a hypothesis that giving territory might work, and we tried it. We tried it several times. We gave it several opportunities, and now it's clear that it doesn't work. So you have to reject the hypothesis. She uses that kind of "we were testing the hypothesis" nonsense when there was no hypothesis to test. I mean, the hypothesis had already been tested in 1947 when the Arabs were offered a second Palestinian state, because the first one is Jordan. So the Arabs in Mandate Palestine, right, were offered first. The Kingdom of Jordan was created out of 3/4 of the land that had been promised to the Jews. So that's your first Arab Palestinian state. And then the 1/4 that remained in 1947, they offered half of that again to the Arab Palestinians, so that the Jews were only going to get 1/8 of what had been originally promised. The Jews said yes. The Arab Palestinians said, no way, we're going to exterminate the Israeli Jews.
Yeah.
That's it. That. You never needed any other experiment. That was it. And the guy who rejected the offer of a state in 1947 was Haj Amin al-Husseini, who's the creator of Al-Fatah, which is the terrorist group that Einat Wilf and her friends brought into the Jewish state, right? So my questions to her were like, why would you ever try that after they rejected the state in 47 and then try to exterminate you? That makes no sense. And she didn't really have a good answer.
Not just the partition plan in 47, but they also rejected the partition plan in the Peel Commission. You know, where the Jews would have gotten, like, what was it, 20%, you know? And it's so funny that you mentioned this, right? Because I'm reading this book by Howard Grief, long book. It's called
about the international law and Israel's right to exist and so forth.
Right. And it is a lengthy book.
Very detailed.
But it's so, like, people who want to really understand this conflict, like something like that, it should be required reading. Like, I refuse to take anybody's opinion seriously if they don't at least know the basics from that book. Because
and you don't even need to know everything that Howard Grief is explaining. Like, if you only just knew what happened in the British Mandate, what happened in 47, as you said, what happened with the Peel Commission and the proposal that was made there. If you knew, for example, that Haj Amin al-Husseini, the creator, let us call him the mentor of Yasser Arafat and Mahmoud Abbas, creator of Al-Fatah, if you knew that Husseini was also running the death camps for Adolf Hitler, which I was fired from the University of Pennsylvania for making known, right? If you knew that, and if you knew that Al-Fatah is the creator of Iran, okay, which is also true. Al-Fatah was training Ayatollah Khomeini's guerrillas in the 1970s and arming
the IRGC. If you say Iran, the Iranians are going to get very, very mad at you. they prefer you to use the word IRGC, that they train.
I see what you mean. No. Yeah. But what I'm saying is the PLO Fatah are the creators of jihadi Iran. In other words, they're the creators of the Ayatollah-run system in Iran, because they were training Khomeini's guerrillas in Lebanon in the 70s and arming them. Correct. And then when Khomeini was brought into power by those guerrillas, PLO Fatah was brought into Iran to create the IRGC and Savama, the terrorist institutions that run that system. So if you knew those things, which were all, it was already in the background when the Oslo process was invented. So this is the kind of thing I asked. I put Einat Wilf in the hot seat, and she didn't even know this. She didn't know any of this, and that's how you understand. And she confessed it in the interview. No, we did. It was obvious that she was learning new stuff in the interview that she, as a quote unquote expert, should have known when she was pushing this on the Israelis in her so-called experiment, right, in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know what you don't know.
Well, but my point is, this is diagnostic information about how the reality is managed for people inside the universities. They don't learn anything truly important. The most important facts are suppressed, and that's why when I started talking about Haj Amin al-Husseini, his performance as a leader of the final solution in World War II, and then as a creator of Al-Fatah, when I started talking about that, they kicked me out of the university system.
Yeah, how dare you go against somebody like Edward Said? How dare you go against the ideology of Edward Said and Rashid Khalidi? How dare you?
Exactly. And the Edward Said, by the way, if you studied, did you study some social science?
No, but I mean, I had his books. I had the 100-Year War on I had plenty of
those books were required reading for people like me. So if I studied anthropology, so if you were getting a degree in the humanities or social sciences, Edward Said was required reading. everybody had to read Edward Said, and Edward Said was a card-carrying member of the PLO. He
He's
was
also
he was he was a top PLO member. He actually conducted negotiations for different PLO factions. That's how important he was in the
correct.
PLO.
Correct. He's also a fraud. He lied about a lot of crap.
Complete fraud. Complete
Yeah.
fraud. Yeah. All right. So now tell us about your online effort. What is this about? Tell our audience about what you're doing. How are you defending Israel and so forth?
I do it in numerous different ways. Part of my advocacy is debunking the BS that comes out of the pro-Palestinian side. Um, Another part of it is like, sort of like these reaction videos where I give people the reality. Part of it is sort of discussing what I went through for through the pro-Palestinian side. So it's multifaceted, but the most important part of my engagement is that is the way that I treat them. I say all the time, I am not a peacemaker. Okay, I don't want to make peace with these people because first off, they're not interested in peace. They say
That's
it
correct.
out loud. So like the idea that I should extend an olive branch to these people just so they can slap my hand down, like get out of here. Um, but I know what makes these people tick. Okay, you do not approach these people as if they are reasonable people. You should treat them like exactly what they are. They are apologists for rapists, murderers, and terrorists. That is what they are. And so the things that they hate the most is being ignored and being ridiculed. I don't grant them any legitimacy. I don't enter any sort of debate with them unless I know for sure that they are good faith good faith in in how they communicate, which 99.9% of them are not. So the opportunities I've had to do that, I can maybe two. There was one time I was talking with somebody and he was like open enough to hearing it, but like maybe two. So I don't, I'm not going to normalize them. And that's what I think is the problem with people who do Israel advocacy is they want to believe that the other side can be reached. They really want to believe that is if I just present them with a rational, sound argument, I can get them to feel otherwise. It's not going to happen.
Well, this is a very important point. This is a very important point. I think the most dramatic instance of this problem that you are putting your finger on is the ideological nature of the victims on October 7th, because these were Jewish lefties who were obsessed with the idea of making peace with the Arabs in Gaza. Uh, their kibbutzim around Gaza, because they were very close to the Gaza border, were employing Arabs from Gaza precisely because they wanted to be friends with the Gaza Arabs.
Mm-hmm.
And they had all these programs, for meeting families from Gaza, getting them together for, lunches and conversations between Arab and Jewish families and all this peace outreach stuff that these lefties would do. And their own Arab employees who worked in their farms gave intelligence to the Hamas monsters, who then came out and murdered, tortured to death, raped, mutilated the very people who most wanted to be their friends.
The most
It's really
idyllic Israelis, literally
huh?
the most idyllic Israelis. It's talked about in Ghosts of a Holy War by Yardina Schwartz, which I also read. Yeah,
It's
you know,
incredible.
they were bringing in these people for work. Some of these people even set up like an emergency fund to take care of their medical needs. It's so,
It,
it's
it's
so
shattering. It
tragic.
shatters you. Yeah,
It,
it shatters you because it makes you realize that uh, of course we criticize a lot the ideology of the jihadis, but we also need to criticize the ideology of these Jews who can't learn a thing. They can't learn a thing. It doesn't matter how much evidence they get. They cannot recognize the nature of their enemy. So they become incredibly vulnerable, like they did on October 7th. They were basically defenseless. because they couldn't understand who they were dealing with. They had brought their enemy into their own homes.
Mm-hmm. Over the course of years.
Yeah.
So they had extremely detailed outlines for just like what time these people attended Shabbat, what time these people came back home from
They were
work,
very
where
easy to
certain things.
kill.
I mean, something like that takes years to plan out. So
Yeah.
these people, every time they brought them in, like that's what's crazy. And I actually just thought like every time they brought them in, they were bringing themselves one step closer to being slaughtered.
That's right. And they were so nice to those Arabs, which proves that being nice to them does not affect their ideology, which is the I would say that's the central plank of this belief that so many lefty Jews have, or perhaps had, because a lot of them have finally been disenchanted after October 7th. But the central plank of this ideology is that if you're nice to them, they'll be nice to you. No, 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 no. That's a fundamental misunderstanding of what jihadism is.
Right.
Uh, when you are conceived as a dirty infidel, there's nothing you can do to change their minds because you are fundamentally corrupt in their view, and the only solution for you is to be killed.
Somebody
Now,
really needs to pass that message on to gays for Gaza, because they think, because, and I understand both, how both mentalities work. The gays for Gaza think, look at me, I am so selfless, I am such a good person that I'm willing to help the people that hate me. And the jihadists that they're supporting are saying to themselves, look how righteous my cause is, that some disgusting person like this would support me knowing that I would kill them in a minute.
or they're just laughing at them. They're thinking these stupid infidels. They're supporting me now. They don't realize I'm going to slaughter them tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, tell us a little bit about the Coptic community, because one thing that very few people talk about is the slaughter and oppression of Christians all over the Muslim world. And as you were saying to me earlier, the Coptic community in Egypt is actually relatively large. It's a
Yes.
large minority. So what are the conditions of the Copts in Egypt? And if you know about this subject more generally, how are Christians suffering in the rest of the Muslim world? What is going on? Tell us about that.
The greatest crime, in my opinion, against the Christians in the Muslim world is the crime of indifference. So I can predict that jihadists and extremists are gonna hate the Christians. Okay, but it's the indifference and the trivialization that the general Muslim public shows to the Christians of the Middle East that perpetuates it the most. So I actually just put something up on my Instagram, okay, attacking Bassem Youssef and these various online personalities that have, been supporting the Palestinians so passionately. And I asked them, where are you when we're being killed? I asked Bassem Youssef, where are you when your community murders and rapes people from my community? Where are you when your fellow Egyptian citizens are being brutalized by your community? Okay? Where are you when your community rapes my community? And maybe it's a good thing that you don't actually talk about, our women being raped, because maybe you'll deny the rapes happened, just like how you deny that Hamas raped Israeli women, because he's done that. And and it's not just Bassem Youssef. I'm telling you, it is the general public. They always tell you to shut up. It's not real. It's not really happening. It's a minor issue. You're spreading division. You're a sectarian. But the ironic thing is, okay, because I get a lot of bullshit from Muslims about this. All right. The ironic thing is they will tell Coptic people to shut up about their suffering in Egypt. Okay. And at the same breath, they'll tell somebody like me, who's an Egyptian Zionist, how can you not support the Palestinians? What about the Palestinian Christians? Oh, now you give a shit about the Christians. Now you give a shit about them when you can use them against Israel. I wish Israel would bomb us then. Maybe you would give a shit.
But you know what? The worst thing, Michael, is that you can't really use, not logically, not factually, you can't use the Palestinian Christians against the Jews, because it's the Arab jihadis who have destroyed the Christian communities in the Palestinian Authority and in Gaza.
Correct.
And those communities have been reduced 90%. It's a genocide.
Right, and they try to present it as though it's a product of, you know, the Israeli military presence in Judea and Samaria.
No,
Okay, but the fact is that they fled only after the Palestinians assumed governmental control over those areas.
that's right.
Because
So
when
Bethlehem is the emblematic case, because the city of Bethlehem used to be something like 90% Christian, Arab Christians, and now it's 10% Arab Christians. It was flipped.
yeah, yeah.
It's
And
quite
you know,
remarkable.
the crazy thing is like you have idiot Palestinian Christians here in the West who co-sign everything that the Muslims do. You
Yeah.
know, it's really like that's why I say it's like I also tell people like, you know, don't try to reach out too much to the Palestinian Christians because they're really not much better than the Palestinian Muslims. They grow up with the same indoctrination here, and they co-sign a lot of the dumb shit that the Muslims say. It's not a, you know, if you want, reach out to the Coptic people, reach out to Iraqi Christians because those people truly suffer. You'll make a lot. You'll do a lot better reaching out to them. But the
Oh
Palestinian
yeah, I think that
Christians,
makes sense. I think that makes sense. I just came back from Chile. I'm in Buenos Aires right now, but I just
mhm,
came back from Chile, where there's something like 15,000 Jews and more than 200,000 Arab Palestinians who are almost all Arab Christians, and they are unbelievably racist against the Jews and supporters of Hamas.
yes,
And you really have to ask yourself, do these people understand anything? I mean, if they were living under the government of Hamas, they would be exterminated.
mhm, yeah. Yeah, the Palestinian Christians and the Syrian Christians are the most anti-Semitic and anti-Israel Christians in the Middle East. Because
But the
they
Jews have
see
done
themselves
nothing
very
to them.
much they see themselves very much in this sort of pan-Arab mosaic.
That's amazing because the Jews have done nothing but protect Christians in the Middle East, and the people persecuting Christians are all jihadis.
Correct.
So how does that work? Where are these people getting their information? How does this identity work, where you end up defending the people who persecute you?
They will take isolated incidents of when Christians have been harmed and use that as this eternal battering ram against Israel and the Jewish people. The most recent case of this actually, it didn't have anything to do with the Arab-Israeli conflict. It had something to do with Azerbaijan and Armenia. So because
Okay.
Israel and Azerbaijan, they're close partners as far as like oil exchange and military cooperation goes, that was really exploited to further that sort of sentiment.
Oh, because Armenia is Christian and Azerbaijan is mostly Muslim. Is that why?
Correct, correct,
I
correct.
see.
It's
So,
insane because you know it's they act as if like Pakistan and Turkey were not also helping Azerbaijan. Like it was only Israel, and the vast majority of Azerbaijan's military support actually came from Turkey, not Israel.
I see. Oh my God. So tell us about, we haven't talked about yet how the Coptic community has suffered from Egyptians, and you before we started the interview, you were telling us about rapes and kidnappings and so
Mhm.
forth. So please paint a picture of how this happens to Copts in Egypt, or perhaps to Christians in other parts of the Muslim world.
So I'll you know keep it mostly on Coptic people because that's the situation that I
Fine.
know the best. Um, let's start off with the kidnapping of Coptic girls and the sexual assault. It is rampant. It happens very regularly, and the police don't do a damn thing. Now,
Hmm.
most of the police staff is always going to be Muslim. It's very difficult for a Christian to get a job where they have a role of authority over Muslims.
Hmm.
So they don't pursue these things seriously. And one of the worst things is they just don't enforce it. You know, it's like, oh well, you know, if we try to take this, if we try to like rescue her, you know, then we're in radicalizing the Muslims even more, as if these people aren't naturally radical as it is. And that's sort of always the excuse that is used, is that if we, try to prosecute the Muslims, okay, then they'll just be more incited and there'll be more bloodshed. So there's this.
In other words, you don't want to make the Muslims upset
Yeah.
because they will become more violent. This is the
Right.
argument.
Yeah. So there's the horrible story of Soet Thabit. She was an elderly Coptic woman who was lynched and forced to walk naked in the streets of Egypt because of a rumor that her grandson was having an affair with a Muslim woman. It was over a rumor.
Hmm.
And when the charges were brought forth against them, they were acquitted. They were acquitted.
You mean the terrorists who
Yes.
forced this woman to walk naked on the street were acquitted of their crime?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And that's that is one of the worst cases that I've heard, but that is very common where they don't pursue charges against Muslims. They, like, people will get killed in Egypt, people will get assaulted by Muslims, and what they do is they do a forced reconciliation. It's called sulha.
Mm.
Okay, the police, instead of pursuing criminal charges against the Muslims, they will force the victim to kiss and make up with the person, the other side's family.
I see.
Right.
So to accept their own oppression, this is what they do.
Yes.
Now, tell me something. So they're kidnapping Coptic girls.
Mhm.
What happens to them?
They are raped and they're forced to be converted to Islam.
And forced to convert to Islam. So
Yes,
their
convert and
families
married.
never see them again. They
No,
sort of disappear into the
they,
Islamic community.
they're for they're or like what, or sometimes what they'll do is they'll stage a video in where they'll have the girl coerced and she'll be wearing hijab and saying, "Please don't come looking for me. I don't want to." Like, you can tell that it's yeah, yeah.
I
I've seen a couple of those. But yeah, these girls end up becoming unreachable. It's only been like a handful of cases where the girls were actually like rescued and brought back home to their families.
Wow. So now the question would be, what is the difference between Egypt and Great Britain? Because we recently had a huge scandal in Great Britain about these Muslim Pakistani rape gangs. They called them grooming gangs that were going around, and this was going on for decades. We're talking about thousands of girls, adolescent girls, minors,
Mhm.
who were uh, taken by these quote unquote grooming gangs, these rape gangs. And British authorities knew this was going on and did absolutely nothing about it, with the same argument that they use in Egypt, that you don't want to piss off the Muslims.
Mhm.
So to me, it looks like the British government is already a Muslim government. They're behaving exactly the same way authorities in Egypt behave.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Islamic Republic of the UK. That's what I call England. It's the Islamic Republic of the UK. I mean, Muslims know how to assert their dominance, man. Like, and it's one thing where you have a defenseless minority in a country like Egypt where they really can't fight back, and when you have like the police, obviously because most of the police is Muslims, so they take the side of the Muslims. But for the UK, it's like you actually like, you could defend yourselves. You
Right.
could pursue criminal charges, and that's
Yeah.
why it's so damn crazy to me. It's like, this that video app that I told you about where you match up with random people. So I purposely connect with Europeans, and I ask them the same question, particularly people from
Mhm.
France and the UK. And I ask
Why
them,
don't you defend yourselves?
no, I ask them first. First, I ask is it as crazy as we hear in in the United States? Is the situation with the Muslims as crazy as we hear? And almost all the time, like, the guy or girl will like look one side to side, and then they'll lean in. They'll be like, "Yeah, it's absolutely insane."
Oh my God.
Yeah, like, it's
It's a minority in Europe. They're still a minority, and already it's Islamic totalitarianism in Europe. You know that if there are already many cases in Great Britain where if you tweet something against Islam, they'll go to your house and arrest you.
Yeah.
If you tweet, so there's no, you don't even have freedom of speech to say anything critical of Islam in Great Britain, the
Can't even
country.
hurt their feelings.
That's right. Well, the latest case that I got, somebody sent me this. If I hadn't seen it, I wouldn't have believed it. A Jewish guy who had a Star of David hanging from his neck was arrested by the British police because under the interpretation that his Star of David was offensive to the pro-Palestinian demonstrators in the street.
Yeah.
So that his Jewish identity was provoking them.
Yeah.
This was the argument.
Yeah. The thing is,
So
that doesn't
they
surprise
say
me.
in the United States, when they argue that there is systemic racism against against blacks, they have this phrase. What is it? I was arrested for driving while black. Something like that.
Yeah.
Well, this guy was arrested for walking while Jewish.
Breathing while Jewish.
Exactly. That's what happened to him.
Yeah.
And he was interrogated for 10 hours.
10 hours?
Yeah. Yeah. Because he had a Star of David hanging from his neck. It's really.
Yeah, the UK has lost. They won in the UK. It is what it is, man.
No. We can't give it to them. Remember, there's Tommy Robinson, and Tommy Robinson just recently got between 2 and 3 million people out into the streets to defend Great Britain. So I don't think Great Britain is done. If the British people awaken, there's still a strong majority.
Well, let me tell you what's going to have to happen, Francisco. Let me tell you what's going to have to happen. They are going to have to forcibly expel people from the UK.
Yes, I agree.
They have to. That's the only thing that's going to save them. If they're unwilling to do that, there's no way. I agree with you. The only other option is civil war.
No. But civil war is going to happen whether they do that or not.
You think so?
What you're suggesting is going to be after the civil war, because those civil wars are coming. There's nothing can stop them now. In fact, my most successful small video is the video where I predict that the civil wars are coming and nothing can stop them now, because the Muslims want them. So they're going to happen. The only question is whether they're going to happen within a year or two, or whether they're going to happen in 5 or 10 years. If they happen in 5 or 10 years, I think we're going to lose. But if they happen soon, we could still win. Westerners could still win. But the problem, is that our governments, our Western governments, are allied with jihadism. So we need to transform our governments first. We need to get rid of these bosses that are not defending the West and replace them with people who are on our side. And I think someone like Tommy Robinson can get that done, because he has so much support now that he could shift the politics in Great Britain so that people start electing pro-British politicians who will really defend us. And if they do that first, then when the civil wars come, you at least have the state on your side. That's a very different situation. If Westerners have to fight these jihadists and their own governments at the same time, they're going to lose.
You don't envision a scenario where they can sort of avoid the civil war and just start deporting people anyway?
Not anymore. No, because the governments don't want to do that. The governments are pro-jihadi.
But you don't envision a situation where like they could elect a right-wing government that will do that to prevent a civil war, or you?
I think that if they elect a government that on a platform of deporting these people, you'll still have a civil war. The Muslims will fight, but at least then you can win, right?
Yeah.
So if you have the organs of state on your side, you can win. But the Muslims will fight because they believe the fight is holy.
And they'll fight everywhere. They'll fight in the UK, they'll fight in France, they'll fight in Sweden, they'll fight in Belgium, they'll fight everywhere across Europe.
That's right.
Whatever happens in one European country will transfer over to literally every other European country in which they're a sizable minority.
Because they go to heaven, you see.
Mm-hmm.
They think they're going to heaven and get 72 virgins, so they're going to fight.
Because it's going to be like a European intifada in the same way that the second Intifada happened, you had, you know, the Arabs in Judea and Samaria plus the Arab Israelis. Like, it's going to be exactly like that, but on a mass, an unfathomable scale in Europe.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen. So I'm praying that these civil wars are going to happen sooner rather than later, because the more that they're delayed, I believe they're going to happen anyway. So since they're going to happen anyway, it would be better for the West that they happen sooner rather than later. And I'm really very concerned for Europeans. I think European civilization is on the brink of disappearing. I hope I'm wrong about that, but I am very concerned.
I hope if your analysis is correct, I really, it's crazy to say this, but I find myself now hoping that it does happen within the next 2 years, because I don't want it to be delayed anymore.
The more we wait,
right.
Well, we're not there, but the more Europeans wait, our fellow Westerners wait, the worse their strategic position is going to become.
And I've been saying that America, you know, I would say that America right now, with where it's at with its Muslim population and the Red-Green Alliance, is where the UK was 15 years ago. And so, like, sort of the UK and France is sort of like a window into the future for what America could be. The thing is, we have certain advantages here.
The U.S. has an advantage because there's an awakening in the U.S. Happening because they're watching what's happening in Europe, and the Muslim population is much smaller in the U.S. But in some places, it's very big. So if you go to Detroit or you go to other places in Michigan, it's getting really big, and they're electing some Muslim mayors already in different places. So
New York City, and it's probably going to happen too.
We're going to get a Muslim mayor in New York City. Yeah. So it's happening in the U.S. too. But I think there's more of an opportunity to fight still in the U.S. Than in Europe.
Yeah. Plus, we have gun ownership here too.
Yeah, that's true too. So I hope that Westerners everywhere will get the message soon, and I can see that you're doing your part, and it actually helps a lot when people who are coming from the Arab world project this message for Westerners. I think that's very helpful because it has a different kind of authority when they're hearing it from someone who is actually an ethnic Arab. And if they're hearing it from someone who transitioned from a pro-Palestinian position to a pro-Israeli position, which is your case, then it also has an added authority. And I want to thank you and congratulate you on your work. I hope that a lot of people go check out your videos and the rest of your material. And I want to encourage you to be brave, because we all need to be brave in this particular historical moment. And it's uncomfortable for everybody who is defending the West and who is defending Israel. We're putting ourselves in the line of fire. And for Arabs who do this, like yourself, that is particularly true. So thank you for being.
There's nothing that's going to stop me. I want you to know that right now. I wake up every day wanting to do this. This is a existential threat. I treat it like an existential threat, and I want to show you why I do this. Okay?
Go ahead. Oh.
Shiri, Ariel, Kafir. Those are the names of the Beavis family that were slain by the Hamas terrorists in Gaza. I remind the world every day that evil did this and evil exists. This is why I fight. This is a very serious fight for me, and I'm not going to stop.
May Hashem bless you, Michael. Thank you very much.
And you as well.
For sharing your views with us. We're out of time, but I hope this is not our last conversation. And I'm going to be checking out your website and your material and sending it out to people. It'll be in the description so that people can see what you're doing and they can watch your videos.
It most definitely will not be the last time we speak. I assure you that.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Everybody, goodbye. This is Management of Reality. We'll see you soon.
Take it easy.